Hello, my name is Ben,
My name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video where today we're going to be going through our prospective teams for game week 34. Obviously, a big double game week. Lots can change in the pre-match pressers, etc. Let's get straight into Josh's team.
Okay, so getting started into my team. If you didn't know already, I am playing my free hit this week. So it's going to be a really big game week in deciding whether I can get into that top 1,000 in the world. So currently ranked at 1864. If I don't get near the top 1k, like 1.2, 1.1 this week, I'll be really disappointed, and it will probably mean that some big assets, typically that we usually own, would have probably gone absolutely crazy. So starting off in the defence, as you can see straight off the bat, I've gone double Arsenal and double Liverpool. And that's mainly because I just really like the double up of Trent and Robertson if they both play. Obviously, there's a massive caveat at the moment. Obviously, against Atalanta, they both started. We don't know how many minutes they've played because we're recording this just before kick-off at the moment. So obviously, that will sort of factor into my decision as well. But Robertson, he's been starting and playing 90. I think he'll be the most nailed out of the two for me. I'm almost certain I'll probably take Robertson into this double game week. Trent, on the other hand, I'll probably see how many minutes he gets tonight. If he does get subbed, I'd be. To be honest, I just feel like I'm going to pick Trent, to be honest, because I feel like if they're fighting for the title, they need their best players playing, and Trent is one of their best players, and especially creating chances as well. So that's my thoughts on Liverpool defence, and then the Arsenal defence as well. You need two to get any sort of gains from them. Unless they obviously get attack and returns. Of course, I've made a big song and dance about that on Twitter this week, which a few people didn't like. But yeah, it's for me, Gabriel, the best defender out of the lot. Some good attacking threat with him. And then David Raya is simply there just to get that sort of, if they do get a clean sheet, we can see the gains from it. I'm not expecting too much from him. He doesn't really get that many saves, so he's just literally there for that 6 point ceiling. What's your thoughts on that defence, Ben?
Yeah, the Arsenal double up I think is sensible because there's obviously going to be some form of rotation. We don't know whether that's going to be defensive or offensive for Arsenal. The defensive stats for the Arsenal team are best in the league as well, so it makes sense that you would go on a double up for them. Almost prefer it myself to a double up in the attack for Arsenal. The Liverpool double up in defence, I'm less sure on. I think just due to the fact that you're relying so heavily on attack and return since their defensive numbers are not great at all. And you're also relying on them playing a 90. I think Robertson's fairly safe, Trent less safe in terms of the minute security. But if you're going to take the risk any week, it's going to be this week to punt on those Liverpool defenders.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, I've got a five-man midfield playing the 3-5-2 potentially this week. Obviously, if there is any changes, you'll be able to find out on our various social media platforms. So yeah, starting off, Mo Salah, he will have the armband for me this week. It's a no-brainer, to be honest, with that double game week. Two decent fixtures, all being both away from home. Expecting at least a couple of returns from him over those two games. Obviously, he disappointed last game week against Crystal Palace. I think in general, Mo Salah's not really hit the heights that we used to. So hopefully he can get back to his ways against Fulham and Everton. We've got the double up in midfield of Crystal Palace with Elise and Eze. At the moment, it's a bit of a tough one. I could go 3-4-3 or I could go 3-5-2. Eze will definitely be in there. He's a fantastic option this week. I don't really need to talk about him too much. I'm sure Ben will talk about him a little bit later on. Elise, though, obviously he only played 70 minutes at Anfield, so he isn't going to get 90 minutes in both games. That's almost a certainty. He's just there because he's a quality player, and when he does play, his numbers are really, really good. Two home fixtures as well against two of the worst defences in the league in terms of expected goals conceded. So yeah, really like that double up at the moment. And also, I just don't like any of the other midfield options personally. I feel like the Arsenal ones carry a lot of potential rotation risk with the likes of Kai Havertz. I'm not a fan of Odegaard. His numbers have dropped off massively this season in terms of attacking threat. And then you've got the Liverpool guys as well, which for me are probably more minutes risks than the likes of Trent because there's just so many options up top with like Louis Diaz, Diogo Jota, Cody Gakpo. There's so many of them that I'm not even sure who to go for. So Yeah, that's my thoughts on those two at the moment. Elise is probably the one who's most likely to change out of all of them. We've got Bukayo Saka, who obviously picks himself. He's going to be stupidly high owned for this double game week. I haven't owned him recently, and he has dropped off recently as well in terms of his stats, but he'll be in there because he's on penalties for Arsenal. And then Brereton Diaz, my big differential this week. I feel like he could go big. Burnley at home, Man United away. They're two fantastic fixtures. He's averaging over 0.5 expected goal involvement per 90. I just think he's a nice differential to have when a lot of players who aren't using the free hit won't be able to sort of attack these probably the best fixtures of the game week, as I mentioned earlier, for Sheffield United. So what's your thoughts on that midfield, Ben?
Yeah, a decent midfield with a couple of decent differentials in there. Obviously, Salah and Eze, I'd say, and maybe even Saka are all captaincy options for this week. So it'll be interesting to see who you end up going for. Elise is a really nice option to have because you're almost covering both the penalty taker in Eze and the set piece taker in Elise for that Crystal Palace attack. So I really don't mind that at all. And yeah, Saka, like you said, is going to be really high owned. I don't think you should probably go without him this week, just given the fixtures. Form is not great, but there we are. Saka's on penalties as well, so you're going to have at least one of those Arsenal attackers. And then Brereton Diaz, I think, is a really good differential to have. Like really, really nice. The underlying suggests that he's going to do well. The fixture, everything points towards him scoring one, maybe even two goals in this double game week. And Sheffield United, as a team, offensively anyway, have massively improved over recent weeks as well since Brereton Diaz has come into the team. So I do think it's a fairly safe bet on a differential, which is crazy to say. But yeah, really, really like that option there as well.
Okay, and then looking forward to the two forwards as well. We've got Mateus Cunha in first. It is a bit of a toss-up between him and Mateta. I'm not totally decided on who I will go with. Someone pointed out on my free hit team reveal that I posted earlier in the week that if I'm having the double up in Arsenal defence, I just as well go for that Palace attacker instead. Obviously, I didn't have Elise at that moment in time, and I'm not sure if I want to go to triple Palace attack for this double game week. I know their fixtures are good, but I'm not sure if they're that good. So yeah, it's a tough one for me. I think Cunha is a fantastic option. And I think he is a better option than Mateta. It's just obviously if I want to sort of maximise the gains, I guess you could say, in terms of between him and Mateta. Obviously, Cunha will play against two of my defenders, which is not ideal and almost makes him like a single game week fixture player. So I'll get Ben's thoughts on him in a moment. And then we obviously got Dom Solanke as well, Villa away and Wolves away. Really nice option. I think Bournemouth in general, their assets are going under the radar a little bit for this free hit. Not seeing too many. Obviously, there's a lot of minutes risks in their attacking positions like Cliver and stuff like that, but I think even their defence could provide some good value this game week. What's your thoughts on that front line, Ben?
Yeah, agreed with the Bournemouth aspects and defence potentially providing some good value this week. Cunha is probably my favourite striker if I was to be on a free hit to have. I unfortunately don't have him because he just wasn't fit enough in the 2-3 games ago when I needed him to bring him in and play him. So that's that. But yeah, I think he's a really good option. I think if anyone's going to score, it's going to be Cunha against Arsenal potentially. We'll see about that. If anyone's going to wipe your double clean sheet, you'd rather it be him than anyone else anyway.
Yeah, exactly that. So it'll be interesting to see who I go with. I'm probably 60-40 Cunha at the moment just because I have Elise and there's no other midfielder that I really want to go to. Because, yeah, like the likes of Gustavo Hamer, I've seen it floating around on Twitter this week. It's not quite on the same level as Elise for me personally. And then on the bench, just to round things off, Jose Sarr. I think he's got a lot of save potential this week, especially with that Arsenal fixture. He generally gets quite a lot of saves anyway. Dean Henderson's another good shout if you're on the free hit as well. He was in my first initial draft, but I decided to go with obviously the triple Palace attackers. Mateta, as we've mentioned, Ait Nouri, if he plays both games, he's a fantastic option, don't get me wrong, but we've just got no confirmation on sort of where he'll be at the moment. I know Ben will be sort of waiting around for that as well. And then James Tarkowski as well. His attacking numbers are actually ridiculously good, James Tarkowski. If anyone is due a goal this week, it is actually him. So if you're wanting a nice little differential, obviously more so for that Forest at home fixture, then he is a nice one to go for.
Okay, so moving on into my team, and as we can see, we're going with a back four in goal. Pickford, so brought him in a couple of weeks ago, played him for the 6-0 loss. But in terms of expected points, he is up there within the top three keepers in the game at the moment for this game week in isolation. Forest home is a decent fixture, and Liverpool home provides an opportunity to get some saves on the board as well. Moving into defence, I've also gone with the double up in Arsenal defence. I've transferred out Udogi and brought in Ben White for this fixture. I've transferred out two players, used my two free transfers, both on Spurs players who have not got a game this week, but next week I'm wild carding. So I brought in Ben White to go alongside Gabriel. I really like Ben White as an option. Obviously, less prone to rotation compared to like even Gabriel. The left side of defence is just a no-go for Arsenal at the moment in terms of FPL picks. So I think he's pretty safe in terms of his minutes. We'll see about that because obviously, Mikel Arteta could change that. But for me, Arsenal really need to focus on that Premier League. And then rounding off the defence, we've got a couple of potential minutes risks here. We've got Ait Nouri, who is potentially coming back from injury. So we'll see what happens with him in the press conference. I'm hoping that he should be available to play minimum of 90 minutes. Let's see what happens with that. And then Kirkez has started the last couple of games for Bournemouth. He's played ridiculously well against Manchester United. So I think he's earned himself at least to start in one of those two games. We know Iriola likes to rotate heavily during the midweek fixture. So we could see rotation for that game against Wolves away. But I'm punting and taking that risk that he does start both of them. Josh, what are your thoughts on the defence and that free transfer?
Yeah, I like obviously the Arsenal double up. I agree with what you said about Ben White. I think Gabriel could be prone to a little bit of rotation. I don't think it's been spoken about enough. He did miss training last week, and if there's like any sort of game that they might rest him, it could be that Wolves game off the back of a huge Champions League clash in midweek. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, it's definitely not a reason to not have Gabriel in your team. I'd definitely still go with him. Nuri, as you say, yeah, we need to wait on press conferences with him. I think even if he doesn't play the Arsenal game, it's not the end of the world. You'd rather him for that Bournemouth fixture anyway. And then Kirkez, it's interesting with him because the reason he did play last week is because obviously a lot of the Bournemouth players were out with flu. So whether they're back or not will be interesting, and whether they've got enough match fitness as well will be interesting, especially for two games in 1 week, like you mentioned. So yeah, definitely opportunity there for Kirkez. It's just whether he gets the nod ahead of all the other assets that Bournemouth have at their disposal.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and we're starting with Bukayo Saka. He remains in the team. He's, like Josh said, he's going to be a high EO, a contender for the captaincy. Probably won't have the armband on him, though, come the deadline. Eberechi Eze is another one to come in for Heung-min Son. I think his underlying data has been decent. The fixtures are fantastic, though, and the potential of him being on penalties as well is really, really good. Like West Ham and Newcastle, as Josh said, the stats show that they're just not great defensively. So really happy to be bringing him in. And it's a definite bring in for him there. And then Salah will probably have the armband for me this week. Fulham away and Everton away. Decent fixtures. Form hasn't been great from Salah, but Liverpool, I expect them to turn up against both these teams. Fulham have been decent at home. Everton are a bit suspect. And if I've got Pickford in goal, then I expect Salah to score a hatful and him to probably get minus points. But there we are. Josh, that's the midfield going a 4-3-3 this week. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, all three of them are the best three midfielders you could choose this week. I think if you could handpick any, really, really nice options. As you say, Eze is probably the pick of the bunch at the minute with the way that he's playing. He's been really good since Glasner sort of took over and he came back from injury. So yeah, excited to own him this week. And then yeah, the other two they have to pick themselves because unless you want to seriously fight a huge EO battle, I expect both of them to be well over 100% EO this week. So yeah, definitely must need Saka and Salah in your team this week.
And moving on into the strike force, and we have got Haaland, Solanke, and Mateta. Now, Haaland is a little bit of a risk there. We'll find out a bit more information, obviously, because they got the FA Cup game first, the semi-final. So we'll see what happens with Haaland. He went off on 90 minutes and couldn't continue, according to Pep Guardiola. So we'll see what happens with that. Solanke, like Josh mentioned, very good option this week. Very underrated options this week, the Bournemouth guys. I've gone with Kirkez and Solanke, so I'm hoping for some decent returns there. And then I've actually gone with Mateta instead of Cunha. The two fixtures are fantastic. I can't really go to Elise, so the best option is to remain with Mateta and play him. Made a decision a few weeks ago. He's on fantastic form. He really does accumulate quite a lot of XG, so be warned, he could play a little bit like Darwin in that respect. That's the strike force, Josh. On the bench, we do have Dubravka, Palmer on the bench, who could come in for Haaland if he doesn't play, Gordon and Konza. So we've got a full strength bench, a very strong bench as well. What are your thoughts? The strike force, the bench. It's a strong team overall.
Yeah, it's really good. When I was looking at your team before it, I was thinking like genuinely could consider a bench boost if you had like a couple more doublers in there. But yeah, Haaland, like you say, we'll hear tomorrow in terms of the press conference, or Friday as you guys are watching this. Guardiola will have some quotes out, hopefully giving us a good update. Obviously, Chelsea in the semi-final. It's quite a big game for City, because if they lose that, they're obviously just down to the Premier League after their massive quadruple run. And then we got Solanke and Mateta, really good options as we discussed. Again, Cunha, Mateta, it's a close call. Mateta gets so much XG. How he didn't score against Liverpool, as we mentioned before, was absolutely mental. For me, in your situation, I would be tempted to start Palmer over Kirkez. I know he's got the double game week, but there is like zero guarantee in terms of the minutes. So, and Palmer still will be super high owned, I imagine, by a lot of non-free hitters. But that's totally up to you. Right.
Kirk is army.
I'll keep that in. That wraps up our Game Week 34 team reveals. Let us know your dilemmas ahead of this huge deadline in the comments. Do you reckon Ben's made the right choice for benching Palmer, or do you reckon he's absolutely crazy?
Well, we all know that I'm absolutely crazy anyway, but the decision will go down to the wire. Remember, if you like the video, give it a big old thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to the FPL Graduates YouTube channel. And as always, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
Later. Have a good game week, everyone.